Today's cardinal lesson, we're going to be talking about you possibly creating a tax time bomb, as referred to by Ed Slott in his book. Ed Slott is a guy I'm just figuring out. I've been in there, part of his program for 10 years, which means I've been to 20 4-day meetings of going over mostly just IRAs and tax matters, estate planning, but it's mostly IRAs and retirement plans. As he's America's IRA expert. So when I constantly refer to him, he's really the Tiger Woods of IRA planning and tax planning and being a CPA. So he's a very credible source. And what we're talking about today is really this whole concept of developing a tax time bomb and what you can do about it. And I asked my colleague, Tom, getting ready for today's show, why does this really matter? Why is this a subject of interest to our audience? And I want Tom to share that with you.
Yeah, sure. So the reason this is a problem is most retirees, most people in our country have most of their savings, their wealth in IRAs or 401ks. They've done a great job saving money there, getting the tax deferral, not paying taxes on it, and they get the tax deduction as they put it in there. It's wonderful. But the problem is now they have these large balances that you have to pay taxes when the money comes out. And so now they're facing this issue of we have these large accounts, these IRAs we haven't paid taxes on, and we're retiring. Now, what do we do? How do we not get killed on taxes on it coming out? Furthermore, we're in a situation where we know tax rates are increasing in 2026. Under the current law, they are going back up to what they were pre-tax cuts. And so they could go up even further from that in the future. We don't know. But one of the things that you have an issue is you have these large accounts with money you have not paid taxes on. How do we get it out in a systematic way, in an intelligent way, and not get killed in taxes along the way?
Okay, that's great. And today is the first session, the first video where we actually have show notes, and Tom's going to be getting into those later today. And this video today, this whole concept of the tax time bomb came about with an interview from Ed Slott about his book. And so what we were saying, what's the biggest issue with people with IRAs at retirement? And he said that people have a huge unpaid debt, and that future tax rates are going to kill them upon distribution. And then if they don't distribute it, it's going to kill their heirs to pay all these taxes at once. So this is really the crux of the whole Ed Slott theory and planning, and we integrate it into the financial planning that we do for retirees. So the next question the interviewer asked him was, so what do you do about this? What's the strategy? And he went through these 5 things. And so I'm going to just run through those quickly with you today. Number 1 is you time it, and it being the distributions. You time your distributions, which is calling for a plan. You have a distribution plan or a tax plan for your IRA. And what that timing involves is the right amount at the right time, or to take the proper amount, whether it's 10,000, 50,000, or 100,000, or perhaps nothing in certain years, 0, and to do that at the right time in the right year. And what's going to drive a lot of that is the tax bracket that you're in. So the next thing that he went over is secure it. And what does he mean by secure it? He said the Secure Act does the exact opposite of what the name implies. Okay, so they passed the Secure Act in 2019. It started in 2020. And the Secure Act, by its name, was supposed to secure people's retirements. And it did a couple of things that secure their retirement. But the main thing that it did is it made the heirs who inherit IRAs, which is your kids other than a spouse, it made them distribute the IRA money over a much shorter period of time. And then, so in other words, number two here is deal with the Secure Act, and you need to know what that is, and we certainly do. The third point that he makes is Roth it, with it being your IRA or your distribution. So when you're under 72, you can distribute your IRA money, and you can distribute it just by putting it directly into a Roth IRA, the whole amount. And then the bad news on that is you got to pay the taxes now. And that stops a lot of people from doing it. But what Ed Slott is saying is, you want to move your money from the to be taxed department or taxed later to never taxed. So, and this is a process over time, but in general, he's talking about take advantage of the Roth IRA and conversions as early as you possibly can. The fourth point that he makes is called insure it. And what's happened after the Secure Act is life insurance, properly financed, properly set up, has replaced the stretch IRA. It is the new stretch IRA. And so we can go over that in a different video, but life insurance proceeds go to your heirs tax-free, which traditional or pre-tax IRA money goes to your heirs with taxes. So what he's talking about here is this is really an alternative or working together with a Roth strategy. You can buy life insurance and you can pay for it over time with net distributions from your taxable IRA. And the fifth subject that he talks about is avoiding the death tax trap. An IRA estate tax plan is designed to minimize tax for the heirs. So what he's sharing is that you've got this IRA, and that's really where the bomb comes into place. The tax bomb is it just explodes at the second death if you're a married person, because when the first person dies, generally they leave the IRA money to the spouse and they keep distributing it. But if they're, generally speaking, this thing just keeps ballooning and ballooning and ballooning, at the same time the tax debt or the tax lien keeps ballooning right along with it. And if all of this is distributed all at once, which it can very well be done by your heirs, that's where the whole tax time bomb. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like you, my partner, Tom, to share with you how you can get the show notes and to talk about the concept of Roth.
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to share my screen here, and where we're going to keep these show notes, and we're going to start doing this on more and more videos, is on our website. So if you go to cardinalguide.com and you enter in there, it's going to take you to our website. And at the top of our website, there will be different sections. And so we're going to go to the 7 worries section. And so this covers the general topics that we're talking about in most of our videos. I mean, it's falls under one of these categories. And so this particular show note is going to be under, I believe it's under IRAs. And so we're going to go to IRAs. We're going to scroll down to the very bottom. We'll get down to here where there's a learning center. And under the learning center is going to be our show notes. And so if we click there, what we're going to have is, let me see here. So we're going to have a picture of our board. So some people will like to print this out and just have it as reference when they're going through the videos. And then underneath that, we have the article that Ed Slott was interviewed in, where it goes through and talks about these different things that were on the board here. So we have time it, we have secure it, we have Roth it, insure it, avoid it. So this gives you a little more context behind kind of Ed Slott's thinking here, and in turn our thinking. The document is about 10 pages long. So obviously there's a lot more information in here than what we can put on our board. So those people who are interested, this is a great resource that they can go through and look at just to get more information on this. At the very bottom of this document, and we'll scroll down here, is we're going to walk through a case of a client where we're doing the Roth it. And so we're doing this with a lot of clients, and there's different ways we can do it. But this particular client had a couple of needs that he was wanting to meet in conjunction with the Roth conversions. And so he came in and had this large IRA balance and was really focused on getting income out of this. And that's really what it's designed for, right? A retirement account is to help provide income in retirement. And so he came in and he really wanted to get a guaranteed income coming out of this account. And so that was his first goal. But the second goal that he had was wanting to do this in a tax efficient way. And this is a thing that we face a lot of times in our work, is where we have clients that have multiple goals and they're making decisions in one area. And it's our job to consider all the other areas that are impacted by this decision. And so we'll get into that on another video. But what he did was he bought an annuity or a series of annuities for a total of $850,000 that he was putting into this contract. And what we helped him do is split that into four annuities, four identical annuities with differing amounts of premium. And what that allows you to do is this insurance company allows you to convert the full contract in a single year to a Roth IRA. And so we looked at his projected income over the next 4 years, and he's going to start winding down work. So his income's higher this year than it's going to be 4 years from now. And so we purchased differing amounts of these annuities. So it was 100, 150, 250, and 350, I believe, were the amounts, with the goal of we're going to convert the smaller one this year, and then on into the future, the increasing amounts as his income is coming down, really trying to get the money out of his traditional IRA into a Roth IRA while still getting the benefit of the annuity, which was his first goal of producing income. And so, Hans, I don't know if you want to speak a little bit more
Yeah,
to
well,
that.
I mean, and so the annuity using as a chassis, I mean, it's accomplishing a bunch of different goals for the guy. And so you've covered the Roth piece of it. It's now that whole $850,000 is coming out of a traditional IRA, and it went into those four annuities, and they're all with the same company, and they're separate because the just around the Roth conversion schedule. So by the time 4 years from now is up, that whole 850,000 is going to be converted to Roth, and he's going to pay the taxes out of other money. But the whole reason he's sticking it in the annuity instead of just having it in his investment account, if you could pan back to that screen with the chart on the annuity, is he's wanting to have that guaranteed income for life. And that's not only his life, but it's the life of his wife, who both of these people are 64 years old. And so this is his IRA. He's the big earner, but she is the spouse. And so, he's sticking this $850,000 in there. And then his plan, at least at this point, is to turn on the income at age 72. And he's guaranteed how much on there, Tom?
Yeah, so this particular one is guaranteeing $70,800 of income, starting at 72.
Starting at 72. Now, and if one of them lives to 100, which is very possible in these days, that's 28 years or 29 years of collecting 70 some $1,000s a year. You do the math on that, it's over $2 million. But it really, getting into large numbers and doing math, he could clearly do better going into the stock market with this money. And by the way, he's still got $2 or $3 million in the stock market. And this money he turned into cash a couple of months ago, getting ready to do this. So, but what this money does is it just guarantees him, no matter what happens, no matter how long they live, or no matter how long one of them lives, because this money keeps coming in. Like if he dies when he's 83 and she lives to 100, she's still getting that 70 grand a year every year until she's dead. It works kind of like your Social Security check. So we're covering a bunch of subjects and checking a lot of boxes. And because it'll all be Roth income, it'll all be tax free. So they'll get that plus their Social Security checks. And these people aren't going to really have any income problems. They're also not going to ever have to worry about running out of money. Okay, so, just to summarize today, if you're in retirement, you're 64 years old like these people, you're 62, you're 65, maybe you're 70, because people generally wait to get a real specific retirement plan till they see retirement on the horizon, till it's like next year or the year after. And some people come into us where it was 6 months ago and they did all the retirement. And we get a lot of people come into us that have already made some of these decisions. So the point of this video is the whole time you've been working and accumulating this money, you've been doing just that. You've been accumulating, you've been focused on the growth of the account. And it's going to grow through this great bull market that we've had go on for 11, 12 years. And this year, not so much. In fact, it's gone backwards, but most people are just losing what they made last year. So it is scary and devastating, but nonetheless, is you've been accumulating to this point and you've been avoiding taxes or postponing taxes. And so the whole point of this video is now as you prepare for retirement or you're in retirement, you got to think about distribution. And with distribution comes taxes. And you need to be smart about the taxes. That's where, and you need a plan. Doesn't mean you have to stay to the plan every nickel and all the spending. That's what we do, is we sit down and figure out what makes sense and lay the numbers in front of you and go over your different options. And the whole tax time bomb is there's a lot of people, if you got a lot of money in a 401k, you're a saver, congratulations. And you're also a good tax planner because you've been able to not pay taxes on that money and accumulation. So you got this big pot of money. And unfortunately, what a lot of people who don't plan do is that thing just keeps growing and growing because they've learned how to live without it. And they got their Social Security and their other savings. They live kind of inexpensively. And then when they pass away or they get very old and their minimum distributions are high, it creates a bomb-like effect when it blows up and there's a whole bunch of taxes coming due. So with that being said, I'm Hans Scheil.
And I'm Tom Griffith.
And we thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.